They tried to tell us that the SEC is overrated and no longer the premier conference in college football. But do the NFL head coaches and general managers agree? Another episode of the Just a Sec podcast starts right now.
You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Yes, sir. What's up, SEC football fans? Welcome to the Just a Sec podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Smith, and another NFL draft has come and gone. And yet again, the SEC reigns supreme, bringing home more draft picks than any other conference in college football. 79 of the 257 picks in the 2025 NFL draft were from the Southeastern Conference, and 15 of the 32 first-round picks come from the SEC. The Big Ten comes in second, with overall having 71 to the SEC's 79. And of the 32 picks in the first round, the SEC and Big Ten combined for a 26 of 32. So no hate to the Big Ten here. The Big Ten is a great league with great coaches, great players. They recruit very well. It's definitely a league that's on the come up. No doubt the SEC and the Big Ten right now are the driving forces that are running college football, that are the two most talented leagues. But the SEC still a little bit better in terms of numbers. When we look at schools in the first round and how many players they had taken, Georgia had 3 players taken. LSU had 1 player taken, an offensive lineman, Will Campbell, but he was a top 5 pick and the first SEC player off the board. Texas had a banner year. They had 3 players taken in the first round. Missouri with 1, Alabama with 2, Ole Miss with 2, A&M with 1, Tennessee with 1, Kentucky with 1, and South Carolina with 1 as well. So the SEC very well represented there. You know, you can remember in years past where it was just 5, 6, 7 Alabama, Georgia players being taken in the first round, and that really kind of inflated the numbers. But Georgia, LSU, Texas, Missouri, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina all getting in on the action, just kind of showcasing the depth that this league has from top to bottom, and how if the team has won 4 games, 5 games, or if they're a playoff caliber team, they still have first-round NFL talent. And that's the argument that we always make about the SEC, right? Is that on any given Saturday, you're going to play a team that if it was playing in another league would probably have a better record. We talked about it on the episode I did a couple of months ago, breaking down just, is the SEC really overrated? I used the NFL draft as a part of that, but I also just talked about the teams that were kind of in the middle of the league that just missed the playoffs, like the South Carolinas and the Ole Misses and the LSUs and the Alabamas last year. How those were all super talented teams that were really deep. SEC just kind of beat up on each other last year. I firmly believe that's what happened. Was never buying this idea that the SEC was super down. And what did I say? I said, let's wait till the NFL draft comes up. And if the Big Ten or, Danny Cannell would tell you the ACC, if these leagues are superior to the SEC, then the professional ranks will tell us. If the best players are not in the SEC, then the pros will tell us. And close, 79 picks for the SEC to the Big Ten 71. But another draft has come and gone where the SEC still has the most picks. That's because the SEC is where all of the NFL talent, not all of it, but a vast majority of the NFL talent is. These guys are growing up in the South. They're being recruited to the SEC schools. And then it's a testament to the SEC of having the best coaches, having the best programs that are able to develop these young men and turn them into professional athletes. Let's take a look, though, at the overall draft, kind of zooming out of just the first round. And picks by school. So Georgia comes in number 1 with 13. No surprise there. How about Texas having 12 players drafted, their most since 1987? Ole Miss, hotty toddy, coming in with 8. Ole Miss have more players drafted than Alabama. Got to tip your cap to Lane Kiffin. He's doing something right over there. LSU with 7, Alabama with 7, Florida with 7, South Carolina with 5. A very impressive showing there for Shane Beamer and his program. He's been there long enough to kind of get them established, and I think they're going to have a guy that could be a first-round pick next year in Lenore Sellers, and they got some other guys on that roster as well that we'll talk about in an upcoming episode soon. I'm very high on South Carolina. I'm very high on Shane Beamer. Tennessee coming in coming in with 4 picks. A&M has 3. Auburn has 3, Missouri with 3, Kentucky with 2, Oklahoma with 2, Arkansas with 2, and Vandy with 1. So when I look at this, like I mentioned, first, Ole Miss really stands out to me. 8 draft picks. That's phenomenal for Lane Kiffin. Georgia doing what Georgia does. It's one thing to recruit at the level that Georgia has recruited at. That's going to have you atop this list every year. But also, it's the development as getting guys in that program and turning them into pros. You can think back to Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher. They probably should have been up on this list, but they weren't able to develop them. So it's one thing to get that talent in there. It's one thing to recruit at a high level, but you got to have a program. You got to have a coaching staff in place that's able to develop those guys and turn them into that. And yet again, Georgia with 13, they sit atop. Texas, they came into the SEC ready. That's what this tells me. Texas was recruiting at an SEC level a couple of years before they got into the SEC. We know how Ole Miss kind of gets down. They're a big portal program. So to me, it's like its own set of challenges. Bringing in these guys from the portal, still being able to get them drafted. Good on Lane Kiffin. He knows how to use them. And Jackson Dart being a first-round pick in the NFL draft as a quarterback, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see what Jackson Dart does in New York. And I think it's big time for Lane Kiffin and that he is now able to go into these living rooms and say, hey, you guys know what I can do in my system with a quarterback. And I just had a guy drafted in the first round already. So big time for Lane Kiffin, big draft for Lane Kiffin. I think he can use this to improve his high school recruiting a little bit because now you got some substance. You can go in there and say, look, we're winning games and I'm getting guys to the league. Alabama was 7, still a strong showing. First year under Kalen DeBoer. He had a lot of guys transfer out whenever Nick Saban retired. Good on him for keeping that together and still keeping it at 7. LSU was 7, good team, just missed the playoffs. All is normal there. They're going to crank out talent. Florida with 7. Very impressive. Very impressive for Billy Napier. I said what I said about Shane Beamer in South Carolina. I think they're really just getting started there. Tennessee with 4. About normal. They got young talent there. They got young talent there. Josh Heupel still getting it established. A&M and Auburn coming in with 3. Missouri with 3. It's disappointing when you look at the way A&M is recruited, but we know that thing kind of got blown up under Jimbo Fisher. And I think that they're going to be in a couple of years. I bet they'll be up here with the Alabamas in this LSU range of having 6, 7, 8 guys getting drafted every year. Auburn with 3. It's disappointing. The highest Auburn player off the board was Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round. And then Keandre Lambert-Smith was drafted in the 5th round. And Jalen McLeod, the edge rusher, was drafted in the 6th round. So Auburn, Auburn has a lot of people on that roster. The Cam Colemans, the Keldrick Falks, the Malcolm Simmons, the Connor Lews. They got a lot of guys, DeMarcus Riddick. They got a lot of guys that are going to be high picks. Some of those guys might not make it to the first round. Definitely think Cam Coleman and Keldrick Falk will. Connor Lew will be a high draft pick. It's just how does the NFL value centers? There's a lot of talent on Auburn's roster. They've been recruiting well since Hugh Freeze got there, but the most talented players are not quite eligible to get drafted yet. I think next year you will see a big bump in Auburn's numbers. You got a kid in defensive backfield in Jalen Crawford that was one of the best corners in the conference last year as a true freshman. If he continues on that trajectory in 2 years, I believe Jalen Crawford will be a first-round pick. So a lot of talent on that Auburn roster, but it's just young and it's still got to develop. Missouri, Luther Burden going to the Bears. That's awesome for Caleb Williams. I think they're getting a big-time weapon for Caleb Williams. And if Luther Burden can reach his ceiling, can be the player that we all know that he can be, if he can reach his potential, then I think Chicago got a steal in the 2nd round, pulling off a talented kid like Luther Burden. I've been in love with his game since he was in high school. I know that this year was a little disappointing for him. They expected to have a little bit of a bigger year, but very productive in college, solid dude. I think that the Bears got a big win right there, and I think that Luther Burden will be productive for a long time in the NFL. A guy that a year ago I said was going to be a top 10, top 15 pick. Fell a little bit with kind of a disappointing season, but I still have tons of confidence in Luther Burden. It's just can Chicago, who is notorious for having a dog shit offense, can Chicago find a way to use Luther Burden effectively? But they got a lot of weapons up there. They got what they think is their quarterback of the future. That'll be fun to watch. Jackson Dart being selected by the New York Giants at the end of the NFL draft. They traded back up to the draft to get Jackson Dart. That's going to be a very interesting storyline to follow in New York as the Giants move on from Daniel Jones. Can Jackson Dart be that guy? Is it just a system thing with Lane Kiffin? Like I mentioned earlier, if Jackson Dart, I think him being selected first round is already a recruiting tool for Lane. But if he's able to go on to have success in the NFL, that'll only kind of further Lane's cause when it comes to all that. And I think when you look forward to next year, that's the quarterback discussion is really interesting for me. Just off the top of my head, Lenora Sellers at South Carolina What kind of year can he have? Can he throw himself into those first round projections? Nussmeier at LSU, very interesting story to watch. He's got all the talent, got all the arm talent in the world. Can he protect the football enough to kind of propel himself into that first round territory? And then Arch Manning. I mean, he's got the last name Manning. He sat behind Quinn Ewers for a couple of years and waited his turn. Can he come in, have this big productive year in that Steve Sarkisian system and propel himself? I think NFL teams, from a marketing standpoint, from a resources standpoint, there's a lot that goes into drafting a Manning. But if he can come out and have that year and prove that he's that guy, he's the dude, then I have a real hard time thinking that, again, with the last name Manning, that he would fall out of the first round if he has a super productive year. So I think the quarterbacks are going to be really interesting to watch as we move forward. And as you always know, the trenches, the SEC dominates the trenches. The SEC recruits the best offensive and defensive linemen. They develop those guys, get them into the league, and football's won up front, right? And if we look at just the first round, LSU with an offensive tackle, Missouri with an offensive tackle, Texas with an offensive tackle, Georgia with an edge rusher, Alabama with a guard. Let's see, Georgia with a linebacker, so not on the line of scrimmage. Defense, though. Ole Miss with the D tackle, an edge from Texas A&M, Texas with a cornerback, Texas with a wide receiver. Texas has some really good skill position players this year. Ole Miss with Jackson Dart at QB, Tennessee with an edge on the line of scrimmage, Georgia with a safety, Kentucky with a cornerback, and Alabama with a linebacker. Those are your positions that got picked for the SEC in the first round. So a lot of those edge rushers, a lot of those guys on the offensive line. We know that we know what the SEC does up front. So some storylines to watch next year. Very excited to see it. Congratulations to everybody that got drafted. Please hit that thumbs up button. Sub to the channel if you have not. Leave a comment in the section below. Let me know who you think maybe it's a steal of the draft. I think it's Luther Burden to the Bears. My guy Jarquez Hunter going out to the Rams at the 4th round. I think Sean McVay can really figure out a way how to use him and get him involved. He was on some bad Auburn teams. He had 4 straight losing seasons at Auburn. Great running back. I hope he goes out there to the Rams and is able to be productive. So leave a comment. Let me know who you think is a steal, or maybe who's a guy on your team that next year you think if he has a good season this coming fall, that in the 2026 draft, he could be a guy that NFL teams would have their eye on. Thank you guys for watching. Sub to the channel if you haven't. Follow me on Twitter at DMcShop28, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.